Okay, so you want to get smarter, right? Like fast. And today we're diving deep into how we learn, specifically in that crazy world of higher education. I mean, come on, who really has time to read every single word of all the research out there?
Yeah, nobody. That's why we're here to pull out the good stuff, the stuff that really matters.
Exactly. And today we've got this super interesting collection of articles to really dig into. It's actually a whole special issue of the Educational Psychology Review. Came out in June 2017, all about student learning in higher education, where we are, and paths forward.
Catchy title, right?
Oh yeah, totally. But it's more than just a catchy title. This special issue is basically a deep dive into how universities think about learning, where it's been, where it's going, and where we might be getting things wrong.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that this isn't just like random academics throwing ideas around. It was really intentional, like they were trying to take stock of the whole field.
It's almost like a checkup on learning theories, making sure everything's still up to date.
Exactly. It's like, okay, we've got all these theories about how people learn, especially in a university setting, but are they still holding up? Has new research actually changed how we should be thinking about this stuff?
All right, so let's talk about the masterminds behind this special issue. The guest editors, Luke Fryer and David Gibbels, right?
Yep, those are the guys.
Okay. So what sparked this whole deep dive into learning theories? It wasn't just a random conversation, right? Like there had to be something that really got them going.
Well, they actually talk about this in the introduction. They started talking and realized that a lot of the research on learning was, well, it was kind of all over the
Like
place.
conflicting results and stuff.
Totally. And I mean, think about it. We're talking about something as basic as how humans learn, and we're still not even sure what's going on. So Fryer and Gibbels were like, okay, something's got to be up here. Maybe it's the theories themselves. Maybe it's how we're measuring things.
Like maybe our tools are a little rusty.
Could be. A lot of the big theories about learning go way back, like to the last century, and they haven't really changed that much. So Fryer and Gavels wanted to see if all this new research we've been doing actually supports those old theories or if we need to like rethink things.
So it's like putting those old theories on trial.
Hmm.
Like, okay, you've been around for a while now. Prove that you're still relevant.
Exactly.
I like it. Okay, so let's talk about those theories. The editors mention that they didn't just magically appear all at once, right? Like there's a whole history there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They talk about how these ideas evolved in different places at different times. It's really fascinating.
So it's not just one big story of learning theories. It's like a bunch of smaller stories all happening at the same time.
Exactly. And those stories are shaped by like history and geography and all sorts of stuff. What was happening in North America might have been totally different from what was happening in Europe.
Okay, so spill the tea. Give us some specifics. Where were all these different ideas about learning popping up?
Okay, so in North America, the big focus became self-regulation. It's all about how students like take charge of their own learning, setting goals, tracking progress, picking good study strategies, that kind of thing.
So basically becoming like the CEO of their own education.
Pretty much. But over in Europe and Australia, researchers were really into student approaches to learning. They were looking at the quality of learning, like are students trying to deeply understand the material or are they just memorizing stuff to pass a test?
Oh yeah, that's a big difference. Like actually getting it versus just getting by.
Totally. And then mainly in Europe, there was this whole thing about learning patterns. It's a
Mhm.
really broad way of looking at how students learn.
Hmm.
Like, what are their strategies? What do they believe about learning? And what kind of overall approach do they take?
So it's like the whole package, the whole learning personality.
Right. And then more recently, especially in North America and China, student engagement has become a big deal. It's all about how connected and involved students are with what they're learning.
So like, are they showing up both physically and mentally?
Exactly.
Got it. So we've got these different groups all over the world tackling the same puzzle of learning, but from different angles. So what was the goal of this special issue? Is it like to get everyone in the same room to compare notes?
Yeah, basically. They wanted to see if they could get all these different ideas to talk to each other. Like, where do they agree? Where do they disagree? And most importantly, can we learn something new by looking at them together?
Okay, I'm digging this. So they basically invited all these different researchers to the party and said, okay, let's see what you've got.
That's a good way to put it. And they didn't just want summaries of existing research either. They wanted these researchers to think critically about the future of the field. Like, what are the big questions we still need to answer? And are there any research paths that are just leading us to dead ends?
So kind of like shaking things up a little bit, challenging the status quo.
Totally. And trust me, there were some surprising insights that came out of
Right.
this.
Hit me with them. What were some of the big takeaways?
Okay, well, one that really jumped out at me was this question of whether higher education actually leads to deeper learning.
Whoa, hold up. Isn't that kind of a given? Like, isn't that the whole point of going to university?
You'd think, right. But Asakainen and Geibels really dug into this. They looked at this idea in the student approaches to learning field, that as students go through university, they naturally start to learn more deeply, like they start to connect the dots and see the big picture and all that.
Okay, so what did they find? Do they, like, debunk that idea?
Well, the evidence they reviewed, including some really long studies that followed students over time, it didn't really support that idea. Like, it wasn't as clear cut as we might think.
So just being in a university environment doesn't automatically make you a deep learner.
That seems to be the case, yeah. And that's a big deal. Like, it makes you wonder if we're really setting students up for success, if we're just assuming this deep learning will magically happen.
Yeah, like maybe we need to be more intentional about it, like actively teach students how to learn deeply.
Exactly. Asakainen and Goebbels get into all sorts of possible reasons for this. Like, maybe the way we structure higher education isn't actually designed to promote deep learning. Maybe we're too focused on grades and exams and not enough on actual understanding.
I mean, I can definitely relate to that. It's like sometimes you just got to cram for a test and forget about actually learning the material.
Right. And they also point out that more research is needed to really understand what's going on here. Like, what factors actually do lead to deeper learning in university?
So it's a call to action for researchers.
Right.
Like, okay, we need to figure this out.
Totally.
Okay, so that's one big takeaway. What else? What about this whole thing about strategic processing?
Okay, so this is where Dinsmore comes in. He did this really cool review of strategic processing. And what makes it so cool is that he's not just looking at one theory or model, he's bringing together all these different frameworks from different parts of the world, like student approaches to learning, learning patterns, and some other North American models.
So he's like the ultimate synthesizer,
Yeah.
like bringing all the pieces together.
Exactly. And he's trying to create a more unified understanding of how students actively use strategies to learn.
So it's not just about whether they want to learn deeply, it's about whether they have the tools to actually do it.
Right. Like, do they know how to plan their studying,
Yeah.
how to make connections between ideas, how to monitor their own understanding, that kind of thing.
So it's like having the right mental equipment.
Totally. And Dinsmore points out that this is a really complex area. Like, in the early days, researchers were kind of simplistic about it. Like, they thought students were either deep processors or surface processors, but it's way more nuanced than that.
Yeah, I mean, people aren't robots,
Yeah.
right? Like, we don't just have one setting.
Exactly. Dinsmore emphasizes that context is super important. Like, the same student might use totally different strategies depending on what they're learning and how they're being assessed.
So like if I'm studying for a physics exam, I might use different strategies than if I'm writing an essay for a history class.
Exactly. And he also talks about how we need better ways to measure these strategic processes. Like, how do we actually know what students are doing in their heads when they're learning?
Yeah, that makes sense. Like we need good tools to really get at this stuff.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about self-regulation, we've talked about strategic processing. What about those learning patterns we mentioned earlier? What did Vermont and Donch have to say about those?
Okay, so they basically gave an update on their own research on learning patterns. And it's clear that this area has really blown up in the last decade. Researchers all over the world are using this approach now.
So it's gone global.
Totally. And Vermont and Donch focused on the core ideas of learning patterns. Remember, it's that whole system of how a student learns their strategies, their beliefs, their overall approach.
Right, right. So what were some of their big findings? Did they discover anything new about learning patterns?
Well, they talked about how the field has become much more sophisticated. They've been working on refining the theory, developing better ways to study these patterns, and looking at how they show up in different cultures and educational systems.
It's like they're constantly pushing the boundaries.
Exactly. And they even talk about how learning patterns research is starting to connect with other fields of study, which is really cool.
Like maybe we can learn something about learning from psychology or sociology or even neuroscience.
Right.
So it's all about breaking down those silos, making those connections.
Exactly. And that's something that Zusho really focused on in her article.
Okay, so Zusha was all about connecting the dots.
Big time. She wanted to bring together 3 areas that have often been studied separately: self-regulation learning patterns and student engagement. Her argument is that by looking at all three together, we can get a much more complete picture of how students learn effectively.
So instead of looking at these things in isolation, we need to see how they interact.
Exactly. Like, how does a student's self-regulation affect their learning patterns? And how does their level of engagement influence both of those things?
So it's like a big, beautiful web of learning.
Totally. And Zusho actually uses existing models of self-regulation to create a new and improved model that takes into account learning patterns and student engagement.
So she's like taking the best of all worlds and putting it together.
Right. And the goal is to make these theories more useful for teachers and students. Like, how can we actually use this knowledge to help people learn better?
Okay, so we've got Asakainen and Govels questioning whether higher education actually leads to deeper learning. We've got Dinsmore breaking down strategic processing. We've got Vermont and Doncha expanding our understanding of learning patterns. And we've got Zusho weaving it all together. What about Fryer? What did he focus on?
Oh, yeah. Fryer was really interested in this ongoing debate between self-regulation and student approaches to learning. Remember those two big frameworks we talked about earlier?
Yeah, one's from North America and one's from Europe,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. And there's been this back and forth about how similar or different they really are. So Fryer basically jumped into that conversation. He was responding to some points that Paul Pintrich made back in 2004 about the differences between the two models.
So he was like, okay, let's revisit this debate and see if we can move it forward.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that while Fryer disagreed with some of Pintrich's points, he actually agreed with him on something really important. They both thought that we need a bigger, more unified theory of learning that can bring these two models together.
So they both wanted to build a bridge between these two worlds.
Exactly. And Fryer had some ideas about how to do that. He pointed to this basic human need for competence. Like, we all want to feel capable and effective, right?
Yeah, totally. Like nobody wants to feel like they're failing all the time.
Right. And he also talked about the importance of perceived control, like believing that you can actually influence what happens to you.
So like having a sense of agency, like I can actually make a difference in my own learning.
Exactly. And Fryer thinks that these two things, competence and control, could be the key to connecting self-regulation and student approaches to learning.
So it's like finding the common ground, the underlying human motivations that drive both of these approaches.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about a bunch of different research articles, all focused on student learning in higher education. But the editors of this special issue also wanted to get some big picture perspectives. So they invited two senior scholars, Alexander and Richardson, to write commentaries on the whole thing.
Yeah, they were like the wise elders of the field.
I like that. So what do these wise elders have to say?
Well, they basically looked at the whole special issue and asked, okay, did this collection of articles actually achieve what it set out to do? Did it move the field forward?
So it's like a final exam for the special issue.
Kinda. And they considered whether the article successfully reviewed the current state of research, made connections between different areas, identified any dead ends, and pointed to new directions for the future.
So it's like a comprehensive evaluation.
Totally. And Alexander and Richardson didn't just summarize what everyone else said. They also shared their own thoughts about the most important priorities for future research in this area. Like, what are the big questions we should be focusing on in the years to come?
So it's like getting advice from the masters.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so let's wrap this up. After this deep dive into all these different perspectives on student learning, what's the big takeaway? What should our listeners remember?
I think the main message is that this is a really dynamic field. Researchers are constantly asking new questions, challenging old assumptions, and trying to build better theories of how students learn.
So it's not like we figured it all out.
Not even close, but that's what makes it so exciting. There's still so much to discover.
Okay, so why should our listeners care about all this? Like, what's the practical relevance of all this research on student learning?
Well, I think it can help us understand what really works in higher education. Like, what can teachers do to create better learning experiences? What can students do to become more effective learners?
So it's not just ivory tower stuff.
Yeah.
It actually has real-world implications.
Totally. And I think this research can also help us be more mindful of our own learning. Like, how do we learn best? What are our strengths and weaknesses?
So it's like an invitation to become more self-aware.
Exactly.
I like that.
Right.
Okay, so to leave our listeners with something to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to pose a question. We've seen that research doesn't necessarily support the idea that duper learning automatically happens in higher education. So what does this mean for universities and teachers? Do they have a responsibility to actively cultivate those deeper approaches to learning? Or is it up to the students to figure it out on their own? Think about it. And maybe even more importantly, how do you learn best? What works for you? What doesn't? What are your go-to strategies? And are they really working, or are you just going through the motions? This deep dive should give you plenty to think about.
Lots to think about.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.